What's up, my YouTube peeps? Sorry I haven't posted very many videos lately. With this whole quarantine thing, I've been kind of lazy. Shouldn't have been, but I've got a couple more videos coming. First of all, race weekends. They postponed 2 race weekends, and actually I'm kind of glad about that because I wasn't going to race those anyways. But this race weekend is coming up. It's May 15th through the 17th over at Utah Motorsports Campus. So I've been working on the race car again, trying to get the race car prepared. And I've been super lazy all off season. I haven't done anything, so I've had to change the oil, I've had to change the transmission fluid, I've had to inspect everything, go through the brake system, flush fluids. All my safety equipment was expired this year, so my seat, my net, my harness, just tons of stuff. So I've had to go back through the car. I've ordered a bunch of stuff. On the racing seat, luckily, there's a brace that I can buy that you're supposed to just put on, and the brace replaces having to actually replace the whole seat, so that saves me a little bit of money. Been working on the car, and it's coming along. I just finished bleeding the brakes. I've got to go through, I changed the rear pads, and just inspect everything, make sure everything's in good shape. It's on the lift, so it's been up and down 1,000 times. So far everything looks pretty good. Just changed the oil, but overall the car should be ready to go. This is one of those nice little accidents that I got into last year. Came out of turn 1 a little hot. Tank slapped and then ended up hitting another car. It ended up straightening me out, and I ended up being able to finish the race just fine, but I think it actually put the other guy into the dirt. Sometimes things like that happen. You feel really bad. Sometimes they end up putting points against you or taking your position away. But for the most part, I usually end up on the podium. I've been pretty fortunate to do that. It can be 7 cars on track or 18, 19 cars, and I'm usually somewhere in the top 3. So this has been an excellent car. This particular car is probably the lightest one built. I can get down to the 3,100 pounds at the end of the race with me in it, fuel, full cool shirt unit, everything, and so this car is very light. It's almost at full power, and I've kind of been toying the idea with selling this car, partnering up with my brother and in his Z, and then we were thinking about possibly doing like an ST car, ST3, ST1, something like that. ST3 is competitive out here, ST4 is competitive out here, so it'd be kind of fun to build something new. But this is the car I'm going to be racing this weekend. It's done me really good, and we'll see if I can't finish on the podium again. So I figured I'd lift the car up, get underneath the car, go over a couple of things that I look for when I'm inspecting it after a race weekend, make sure it's prepared for the next race weekend, and kind of some starting points that I like to do on some setup stuff. Alright, so I start at the front of the car, just go through and make sure everything's in pretty good shape, nothing's completely missing. This is all banged up, but that's going to happen. Brake ducting, it'll start getting holes worn in it. The nice thing about right now is it's pretty cool outside, so I really don't worry about brake ducting until later in the year, or on the outer track events where we have the half-mile straight where you end up having a lot of brake heat. But in these shorter track events, it usually isn't that big of a problem. I just go through and check all my control arms and my bushings and make sure that everything's in good shape. I double check my settings on my control arms, or not my control arms, but my toe links for the sway bars. I like to go full stiff on the front, full stiff on the rear. It depends on the track setups that we're on, east, west, short, long. But for the most part, I've found that I'm the fastest on a full tight suspension setup with my sway bars in this car. I'll look through everything, make sure my exhaust is mounted strong. Go back through to the rear, make sure that my end links are tight on my rear sway bars. Check all my bushings. All these bushings have been replaced to the Nismo bushings. We were allowed to change these out to like a full urethane bushing now. I haven't done that yet. I don't know that it'll necessarily help with speed. I like to mark all of my settings for my alignments to make sure nothing moves. You know, if it starts to move, you can see that it's been moving. But right here, this is going to be the rear toe. This is going to be the rear camber. And sometimes these darn camber bars right here, they'll bend. If we slide sideways or hit some rumbles really hard or something like that, these will bend and it'll actually change your camber, which ends up changing your toe. So you have to really kind of be careful, pay attention to what's going on. If you end up sliding or anything like that, you want to check your alignment. I've got a nice string alignment tool that I use for that. Car looks like it's in good shape. Everything's ready to go. I just changed the fluids in the transmission. I usually do the rear diff, but the rear diff fluid I did about halfway through the season last year. And it's really expensive fluid, and you have to order it. It takes a little while to get here. I just barely decided I'm going to hit the track weekend, so I'm not going to mess with it. I'm just going to leave it where it was at. Hopefully that doesn't bite me in the butt later, but everything should be okay. So that's the car up on the lift. Kind of the things that I check for. Brakes are super important. Brakes are the most important thing in racing, quite honestly. If you don't have trust in your brakes and solid foot pedal and all that stuff, that's where you're going to lose time. That's where you're going to lose confidence. That's where you're not going to be able to enter the corners properly. So I like to run the Pagged brake pad. I usually replace my rotors at the beginning of the season, but I replaced these about 3/4 of the way through the season last year, so they're still good. I'm just trying to save a little bit of money, run on a budget this weekend, run some older tires. Tires that end up sitting around all off season, I kept them in kind of a climate controlled room, so they should be pretty decent. Last year I ended up running on some that weren't, and my times were 2 to 3 seconds a lap slower. So hopefully this year, with the tires being kept in climate controlled room, they won't fall off that much. I've got some pretty good rubber that I can utilize for the race weekend, for the races. Got some good rain tires just in case it rains. So I should be prepared enough to be competitive. Hopefully it'll put me on the podium, but we'll find out. So I've done all my safety checks, all my fluids, verified everything's good to go to put the car on track. The first couple laps you put in, you always make sure you go somewhat slow. That way, if there's any issues, you don't end up having a major issue, especially for the first time on track after the winter break. So everything's ready to go. I'm just going to lower the car back down. I've got to pull the seat out to put in the new harness. I've got to replace the window net. So the window nets only last about 5 years. Seats only last 5 years. So the seat's still okay to use as long as I put a brace behind it. So that should be here today or tomorrow. I've got a new harness to replace my OMP. So the harness, of course, is still good, but it's not good to use for racing anymore. They're only good for 5 years. So something like this is really good for track use, for like TT or different things, but they just won't let you race with it. So here's the harness I'm going to throw on. It's actually only got 1 more year of compliancy left. I didn't have time to order a new one and wait for it to show up and make sure it got here. One of my friends had one of these that came out of a GT3 car. It's a Scroth harness. These are actually very nice, expensive harnesses. But it's only got 1 year of compliancy left, so I'll use it this year and then I'll buy another one for next year. But it is red, and I think it's going to look pretty good in the car. I also ordered a red net for the door, so I think it'll all look pretty good together. All right, so I've got the seat out of the car, got the old harness out, trying to install the new harness. One of the things that you need to know about installing a harness is they need to be triple wrapped. It's kind of hard to explain, but I'll try and show you. Okay, so all the eyelets in different places that they need to pass through 3 times. And the reason why is so that they won't, if you end up getting in a bad accident and it pulls on it, it's not going to pull it loose. So when I wrap them back here, when it goes back through the eyelet, you have to go back and forth, 3 times for it to be considered legal. And it's all about safety. So that, like I said, if you get in a major accident, which I've been in before, it saves you, and it doesn't allow the harnesses to stretch or anything like that. So this is the old harness. This is the new harness. The new harness is a Scroth. It's a little bit higher quality than the OMP. The OMP is a great harness. That one saved me in a bad accident one time. But the Scroths are really nice. A little bit softer material, easier to actually wind back through that, the scenario, like I said, 3 times. Kind of like this one right here. Let's see if I have another one right here. See how it's wound back through there more than once. That way, like I said, it's a little bit safer. So we got the seat out. I made an adjustment on my seat. I had actually dropped it down about 1 inch and to try and lower it, but it really kind of lowered my visibility. I was still fast, but I raised it back up. I think it's a little bit more comfortable that way, so we're gonna go back to that. Clean the seat up. I should be getting the brace for it here soon. The brace just goes on that back, right between the two straps. The brace just mounts right here, and then it just comes down here with an arm and has a back plate. And I don't exactly know what that's supposed to do, but that's what you're supposed to do to keep it legal. So we just got a goodie in the mail for the race car. Let's open it and see what it is. See what showed up. It's either going to be the window net or the seat brace. It seems like it's probably going to be the window net. Maybe not. Maybe it's going to be the seat brace. All right, it is. Cool. So this is the part that mounts to the cage. This tube slides through it. This pushes up against the back of the seat, and it just braces the seat. That way, if you get in an accident, the seat doesn't go further back than it should. And I guess the assumption is as a seat gets older, it gets weaker, and so this is supposed to sturdy it up and put you back into compliance. Okay, so this is the seat harness, and as you can see, it's went back through this. It's had to go through 3 times. It's really hard to see because this Scroth belt is much thinner, but that way you get in an accident, it's not going to stretch, it's not going to give, and you're not going to lose your life. So here's the seat brace. This is what it looks like. I've just got to get the seat in, and then I can make some marks of where I need to drill a hole through here to be able to, so this won't move. And then once I do that, I can put the seat back in, install it tightly, and we're good to go. One more thing to note and be aware of when you're installing a harness is make sure you roll up the remainder on the shoulder lap belt and zip tie it off like this. That way they're not flopping around in the back. And quite honestly, I believe that's actually a compliance issue, and it has to be done either way. So we've got the harness installed to where it's a comfortable fit. Pretty excited to try this new harness. Actually, it's pretty comfortable. I think it's a little bit more comfortable feeling than the OMP. We will see. Awesome, new tires arrived. Who doesn't like it when new tires show up? Right before track weekend. These are the Toyo Proxy RRs, the 275/35/18. That's the spec tire for Spec Z. And I've got some old worn out tires right here that need to be replaced. So I'll just throw them on these wheels and we'll be good to go. Got the car all wiped down, ready to go, pretty much ready to load up into the trailer. I just have to get the window net put in on this driver's side. It's supposed to be here this afternoon, so I should be able to get that done. Throw it in, go get the car tech inspected, and go race.